So here it is. This is number 5 for me and the many folks that have been working on this. I want to start by just thanking Michael Gormany, Ron Gizzi, and the other members of Michael's team, and overall the work that, in particular, coordinators and department heads did to pull together this budget. These budgets are not easy to pull together. There's a lot of moving parts, and just really grateful for everyone's support. So as required by the city's charter, March 1st, which is today, the mayor is to present to the Board of Alders a proposed budget. This is my 5th budget that I presented to the Board of Alders. Each one is challenging in different ways, and this one is no exception. There's a lot in here, so I'm going to cover kind of the main highlights and underscore that this is part of our annual budget journey together. There will be many opportunities over the next few months to answer more questions about the budget, for the public's voice to be heard, and the alders to deliberate on this budget. I want to start by saying it's an exciting time for our city. I talked a lot about the direction that New Haven is going in my inaugural address about the growth that we're experiencing in the city, the growth in population and construction growth, and ensuring that growth is inclusive. And every year when we put together the budget, it's an opportunity for us to reflect on how far we've come over these past 5 years. It is just remarkable to see the change in financial footing in the city. And that is both a great thing, but as you will see in this budget, we also still have a lot of challenges ahead because of many of the financial decisions at the past that we are working to address now. In reflecting on the progress we've made, in addition to the growth we've experienced, we have seen a dramatic increase in the payment in lieu of taxes funding from the state, over double what it used to be. This year it's up to $96.6 million in pilot funding from the state, which is just a huge, huge increase from the around $40 million that it was a few years back. We've seen a dramatic increase in Yale's annual payment to the city from $13 million annually to $23 million. And that number continues to rise because it is tied to, some of it's tied to CPI and some of it is tied to the fire budget. This year, it will be $24.7 million coming from Yale University. We've also, because of the work of Michael and his team, seen a very responsible budgeting. We've invested more than ever in our pension funds to ensure that our retired employees have the assurances that when, as they continue to age, the city will follow through on its commitments. We have capped the amount of debt we issue annually so that over time we will bring our debt service payments down. And we've seen, because of all this work, our bond ratings improve. We continue to need to invest in these things, and it will continue to be a struggle, but we are doing the work that we need to do. This budget sees those costs continue to rise. Our pension costs continue to rise, our debt costs continue to rise, our debt service costs, and our city will still face challenging times. And what is important to me, and this, when after last year's budget presentation, I went to a number of community meetings and showed the long-term financial trajectory of the city. I think it's important for us all to see that those debt service and pension payments annually, if you look over time, they will continue to rise over approximately the next decade, and then they will start to go down if we continue on this pathway of financial stability and ensuring that we're making our payments annually to the ADEC and to reducing the amount of debt that we issue. Both pension and debt service payments will continue to rise, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel where they will start to go down. And so us as a city, we as a city have to do a lot of hard work to invest in these funds, and it will take time, but there is eventually a light at the end of the tunnel and make it make it easier. And growth obviously is an important part of this as well. This year's budget is both responsible and responsive. It's responsible in that we continue to invest what we need to in pensions and debt. We don't restructure our debt or do any fancy gimmicks to push costs into the future. It's responsive to calls from the community and the needs of a growing city. And I want to talk about 4 important components of this budget that are different than the past. On housing, parks, education, and public safety. First, on housing, if anyone that lives in New Haven will walk around the city and understand that we have a serious housing challenge. And that is not different than any other city in the nation. You walk across the green and you talk to people, and I guarantee you some people will raise their concerns, their challenges that they face around housing, whether it is an increase in homelessness, whether it's people paying way more than their income on rent. There's a lot of challenges here. And so the budget includes multiple changes to how we approach how the city is confronting our housing challenge. The first is that we are adding 7 new positions that are related to housing code inspections. Those positions will go into the Livable Cities Initiative Department. 5 of those positions are housing code inspectors, and one of the positions is an attorney that will focus on ensuring that we are able to follow through with more accountability for absentee landlords. And then there's an administrative position, because we need to grow our ability to do more inspections. There's been a lot of good work being done by LCI and the team, but our housing stock is much more in number than it was 20 years ago. There's many, many more rental units, and so the need for more inspectors is critical. Second, we will be creating a housing and community development division. LCI currently does 2 things. One is on the code inspection, residential licensing, and blight, the enforcement side of things. And then 2 is on housing development. We will be separating out the housing development arm of LCI, creating a new division under Economic Development Administrator, creating a new Deputy Director of Economic Development position to oversee the work that group will continue to do on expanding, in particular, affordable housing options in our city. So once again, just to make sure that people understand the details there, LCI will focus now moving forward solely on the enforcement side of things. We need someone waking up every day that's focusing on what the original intent of LCI was: inspections, housing, rental housing, safety, rental housing accountability. And then under economic development, there will be a new division that will be created. And the folks that are currently working in LCI on housing development, in particular affordable housing development, will be under that new division, working to ensure that there are more options for affordable housing. The third thing on housing is increasing our support for the unhoused. So this budget includes a $300,000 increase in the direct funds that we provide to support individuals experiencing homelessness. We provide a lot of those funds to a lot of our nonprofits. That will bring the overall number from the general fund that the city invests in homelessness to almost $1.8 million. To be clear, that is the largest amount that any city in the state puts into supporting the unhoused, and I think that we should be proud that we put in that kind of effort to ensure that people in the long term have housing stability. Parks. We have heard a lot in these past several years from many community members from many different walks of life about how our parks are one of the most important assets in our city, and the city needs to do better in ensuring that our parks are well maintained. There's more responsiveness to community needs. Our athletic fields are better maintained, and this is important for the core health of our community. It's important for ensuring that our youth have productive things to do around mentors, and so we have embarked over these past several months on a public process led by the Urban Resources Initiative to get a lot of input on how people envision our Parks Department should exist. So the first thing that is a change here is we are separating out the Parks Department from Parks and Public Works. As you'll recall, in 2020, we merged those two entities. We are separating those out now. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't just go back to what we were doing before, but we went through a thoughtful process to see if there are other things that we could change to improve the way that we support our parks and the many activities that go on into it. So first, Parks Department will be separated out from Parks and Public Works. Second, and based on a lot of feedback that we got through this community input process, we will be dividing the city into 3 parks districts and creating 3 new positions called Parks District Managers, similar to the success that we've seen, for example, in our police district managers, where there is a police officer that is in a leadership position that goes to community management teams, that goes to neighborhood meetings, that gives out their cell phone to people in the community, that is the direct contact for that district for all, in the police department's case, policing related issues, in this case, parks related issues. And so those 3 positions will be divided up into 3 different districts in the city, and we will call them Parks District Managers. Second big change is that we are adding additional positions focused on athletic field maintenance. A superintendent of fields, a Parks 4-person, and 2 field technicians. A lot of the feedback that we got in the community process, engagement process, is that our athletic fields are something that so many different organizations, whether it's New Haven Public Schools, whether it is Pop Warner, Pop Smith, so many different organizations use. And we need to make sure our young people feel pride in our team, in our fields. We need to make sure that our fields are the best for our young people. And adding these new positions will allow us to ensure that there is better maintenance and responsiveness to those concerns. That's parks. Education, this budget includes a $5 million proposed increase to New Haven Public Schools. I note that in the governor's budget, there's just under $4 million additional that is proposed for an increase in investments in public schools, for a total of almost $9 million. In addition, we are proposing, as a part of this budget package, $2 million in youth at work over 2 years. And that funding will ensure that any youth that wants to get a job through the Youth at Work program will get a job through the Youth at Work program. And finally, a smaller budget item, but an important item that I think reflects our values, is $30,000 that will go to the Pride Center. Finally, public safety. The budget includes 5 new public safety related positions, 4 sworn positions in the police department in leadership, 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and 1 detective, and 1 in PSAP, our 911 call center, to help us ensure that there is more upward mobility in the police department, and that we are following through on the work that we need to do on public safety. Big picture financial summary. The budget growth is an overall increase of 2.66%, which is less than inflation. I want to underscore that things cost money. And one of the hardest parts of my job is balancing the strong demand for more city services and having a tax rate that is something that our residents have the ability to pay for. And that is a difficult and challenging work that I struggle with every time I present a budget, because we know that people struggle financially, and whenever there is a tax increase, it is a struggle. But at the same time, it is important for people to understand that the services that the city delivers cost money. And prior to me becoming mayor, I too said, if only the city could be more efficient and do less with more. But the reality is that you can only do more with more. And frankly, in today's world, you can't even do the same without more, because of our increasing fixed costs, the inflation that we're seeing. And so it is important for, I think, residents to know that our team worked very, very hard to steward the funding that they give to the city through taxes. And that we ultimately are trying to balance the demand for services and the amount that people pay in taxes. This budget includes an increase of 1.48 mils, so 1.5 mils, from 37.2 to 38.68. Overall, that's a 3.98% increase in taxes. With the exception of the last 2 years, this is the lowest tax rate we've seen in the last 2 decades. And I'd also underscore that while oftentimes we hear in New Haven about how high our taxes are lower than Waterbury's taxes, our taxes are lower than Hartford's taxes, our taxes are lower than Bridgeport's, than Hamden's, than West Haven's, and in many other municipalities around the state. And that is not to take away from the challenge that residents have to pay taxes, but we need to balance the demand for services and our ability to fund them. I'd also note that while there are new things in this budget, the overwhelming driver of the additional cost is things that we really don't have a lot of control over. The debt service, the pensions, an increase in employee salaries that we've seen in a lot of our union contracts that we have completed over these last several years to keep us competitive and ensure that we are attracting and retaining the best employees. So next steps, I've submitted my budget today. Board of Alders will then, it is now in the Board of Alders' hands. The Board of Alders will have multiple public hearings and workshops with different city departments to dig into a lot of the details in this budget. I gave a lot of high level stuff, but there's other things in the budget that I'm sure will come up over time. I'll also be doing several community budget info sessions and we'll be forthcoming about where and when those will be. The Board of Alders will approve the final budget in May. And I wanted to finish by, again, thanking the people that are working on this and overall saying, compared to the budgets that we struggled with in 2020, 2021, while this was a challenging year, we are in such a better position because of the incredible amount of work our state delegation and lobbying groups have done to push Yale University and the state to give us more. I can open up to questions.
You mentioned that the general fund budget is increasing by 2.66%. Could you say just what is it going from and to? Is it 662 right now instead of the 680 something?
He's got it right here. It is $680.4 million budget, which is $17.7 million increase.
And could you identify a few numbers that make up that 17 million? Like how much specifically is debt service increasing, or how much pension? What makes up that increase?
You can dive into some of the.
Yeah, I mean, we just posted the budget online, so some of the numbers are there. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know debt service is increasing by about $3 million. When you add up all the categories, pensions increasing by a little bit over 1.1 million. Employee salaries are increasing, as the mayor said, based on some of our bargaining unit contracts. And again, the Board of Education is also increasing by 5. So I think those are some of our bigger drivers looking at the budget itself.
And how many new full-time general fund positions are there?
31.
30. Yep.
Is there any overlap between the positions you proposed this year and the positions you proposed last year, which were rejected by others?
I think, and Michael can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only overlap is there are 4 fire department positions that we are required to submit to the Board of Alders based on a previous MOU. Is that the only overlap?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you mentioned splitting out the housing and community development division to something under economic development. So who will be responsible for the LCI housing code enforcement stuff, and then who will be responsible for the new housing and community development?
Sure. So there's the current director of Livable Cities Initiative will obviously remain in that position and will be overseeing the housing code, residential licensing, and anti-blight work. Separately, the Housing and Community Development division under economic development, we are creating, and it's in this proposed budget, a new deputy position that obviously has not been created yet, so there's not a person in that position now. But that person, whoever that person may be, will oversee that work.
And who will be responsible for the new Parks Department, and who for the Public Works Secretary?
A somewhat similar answer. So the current director of Parks and Public Works will remain at Public Works, and there will be a new director of Parks Department position created, and we will need to post for that position and hire for that position.
You mentioned a new attorney in LCI to hold landlords accountable. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means? What kind of work will this attorney be doing? What is that?
I can talk a little bit about it. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on right now, both on closing housing, affordable housing deals, and the work on the housing and community development side. And there is a lot of work going on the code enforcement side. And currently, there's one attorney that does both of that work. And so the concept here is there basically be an attorney that goes with the housing development group, and then a new attorney position that would be created that does the enforcement work. And as you've seen, we've been, as an example, taking Ocean to court very frequently. We typically put liens on properties if there's a blight-related issue. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to follow up on landlords that don't properly submit the residential licensing permits. So there is a ton of legal work behind the scenes that needs to be done to follow up on those things. It is not just a housing code inspector shows up, and then if the landlord's property is not well maintained, they can just find them right there. There's a lot of kind of behind the scenes work that needs to be done on the enforcement side. Great. Any other questions?
Given that there are many vacancies in the police department, what is the reasoning behind adding 4 new positions versus maybe increasing salaries or approaching it for
What
what is the reasoning of adding 4 more positions to police force given the high number of vacancies there already?
Sure. So they're not directly related, right? We're in contract negotiations with the union right now about salaries. However, there need to be more leadership positions, and lieutenant to sergeant and detective positions allow for more upward mobility for the officers. The chief typically, or like every department, will request different positions, and we'll review those positions, and those were 4 positions that he requested.
You're well below the strength in terms of sworn officers that you were at a few years ago. Has there been any discussion about increasing the number of officers on the street?
We'd love to. We're actively working to hire, and that work continues. We're also actively having conversations with the police union to hopefully find a pathway to finalize the union contract. I underscore that the challenges around hiring right now for police are something that every city around the nation is struggling with. I regularly attend Connecticut Conference of Municipality meetings, and that is one of the things that comes up from a lot of our colleagues around the state, is just how challenging it is that 10 years ago there were hundreds more applications for people to become police officers, and now there are many fewer. So this is work that we need to do. Okay.
You said the budget's available online now?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.